Service safe.
Outside the mic, outside the mic, outside the mic, outside the mic.
Hello and welcome. It is Outside the Mic. I am Jarrett Weimer.
I'm Martin Meyer.
This is a podcast where we banter all matters music.
Mostly we do. How'd you like that?
You did good. You were just right behind me. That was profesh.
Except I had a weird little accent. I don't know why I did that. I was like, and I'm Martin Meyer. This sound kind of like that.
And I'm Martin Meyer, and today we're going to talk about Bush's baked beans.
Yeah, that didn't come to mind at all. But I decided this time I've been kind of just being goofy all the time on the beginning. And I was no, not Cat Stevens.
You were DJ Mel.
I was DJ Mel.
DJ Mel.
Who was the other guy, the guitar player? I was Chet Atkins one day. Remember that?
Yeah. You really aspire to be.
I did. But I didn't want you to buzz me.
I would never buzz you. I don't even know if I have the app anymore.
You don't have the app anymore, and I was going to ask. You know, we have all these little things that become part of the show,
yeah,
and then they come in and out.
They just weave in and out.
I was just thinking of weave. That's
weave.
It. Yeah,
not to be mistaken for. Isn't a weave like a wig?
Yeah,
yeah,
can be.
Not to be mistaken for a wig.
I like your new hair weave, by the way.
Thank you.
You sound tired, Jarrett.
No, I'm just trying to do. You were very monotone with DJ Mel, so I was just trying to.
I got you.
Embrace that.
I know you get.
And I'm coming off a little bit of a head cold, I think, but
okay,
I will be okay.
As
Outsiders.
long as I inspire you to something.
You inspire me to do something every day.
Can I go back just for a second?
Sure.
I would like to think of it. That's a good way to think of it, is weaving in and out of the show instead of just like these big gaping holes in the show, which almost did a snort there again, too, folks. Thank you, outsiders, for listening. And that's a wrap.
We've had that is not a wrap. We've had a good season 3.
We have.
We've had a lot of really intriguing episodes.
Mm-hmm.
We've had an interview.
Yeah.
With the possibility of more to come.
There is.
We've done some different things this season. We've got out of our little comfort zone.
I think we did, and it's interesting that how are you on what's the jury on the morning thing? Because, now instead of getting, smashed with a whole bottle of Scotch, no, I'm just kidding. We didn't do that. But we start early in the morning, and I think I'm
fine with it.
Good.
I'm fine with it. I feel it does two things. What? We have that early morning kind of deep resonant to our voices, so it makes us sound more broadcasty. Mm-hmm. And 2, my brain is just foggy enough that I have that cool millennial angst in my voice.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's like I'm a troubled soul, but really I'm just a conceited millennial.
I swore I wasn't going to laugh too loud or snort on the microphone, but you're making me laugh, Jarrett. The millennial angst. I'd not heard of that. But
live at the Palladium. Millennial angst with their hit song. Nobody understands me, and you've never heard this song because it's indie.
Nobody understands me. I bet there is a song called Nobody Understands Me. Do you think? That would be the ultimate angst song.
Why don't you ask Google Girl?
I'm going to ask her that. And you can go on with the other thing. The one thing I want to just say about morning is, I got to tell you, sometimes this coffee, as soon as we turn on the record button, I'm like, oh no, it's starting to surge through my veins.
You start to get a little bit of, in the veins. That's exactly.
And then I just got to go back to ohm resolution.
You got to resolve it with a little ohm.
Ding, 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 ding. Who remembers the episode ohm resolution? Go ahead. Start dialing. Oh, the switchboard's lighting up.
Our what's her name? Studio assistant Beverly.
We have to ask outsiders if we can't remember who our made up studio assistant was.
This is going to be the test. This is going to be the test. Outsiders.
Yeah.
We know there's a good handful of you that are dedicated, that listen each week. The first one, because we're not going to do the work. We're not going to go back and listen. Let's be honest. The first one to comment on our Facebook page, the name of our studio assistant that we talked about, Neither of us can remember the name, and she's quite upset.
She is, and we lost her. I think at one point we started a rumor that she died.
Yeah.
But then we just said we didn't know what happened to her. I'm thinking it was Marianne. I don't know.
Marianne?
It seemed like it started with an M.
I want to say something. Was it Karen?
Marilyn?
Marilyn. No, it wasn't Marilyn. I don't remember. First one to comment, we will send you something really cool.
Yeah.
Either a cool merch thing that we're working on or a nice handwritten letter from Marty.
Or a cake.
Well, don't get too crazy.
We're going to do outside the mic.
Can you bake?
Cake.
I can't
no,
bake.
I can't.
Yeah, okay.
What was your song? Nobody Wants Me?
Nobody Wants Me, and
Was it Nobody Wants Me?
have you ever heard of this song? It's indie. You probably haven't.
There is a song called Nobody Wants Me.
Really?
Yeah, right here it's a song by Norton Buffalo, but then there's also Nobody Wants Me lyrics. Ooh. Can I take a second to look that up?
I don't care.
Really quick. The trees were a-swaying to the songs that she was singing, sitting on the back porch of her country home. It's a country song. Then the moon would start to glowing, the soft breeze start to blowing, and she would sing the blues, but nobody would ever hear. And she'd sing, nobody wants me. They left me all alone. My mama's out drinking, my daddy's dead and gone. Oh, I didn't follow your rhythm very good, but that was
Good job.
That's it. Well, you know, it figures. That's kind of funny. Yeah. What? It ends up being
Nobody wants me. I'm dead and gone.
There you have it.
My memories haunt me, and my woman's not home.
We're going to have to listen, and we might have to cover this now. But right away, that is the ultimate angst song. It says, they left me all alone. My mama's out drinking, and my daddy is dead and gone.
Oh, golly.
Now that I know how to phrase that, I could have done better.
Dead and gone.
There we go. All right, the ultimate angst.
Okay, well, there's no better opener than something with a little music, but we better get into it. We are going to do On This Day in Music.
Yeah. Woohoo!
And I'm reading nothing but Beatles and Stones.
No, please.
I'm just kidding. We'll leave them out. They've had their spotlight. We're looking at April 26th, 1969. Seems like we always start with 69 as well, but let's go for it.
It does seem like that.
Yep.
And that's the year of Woodstock, so that's kind of cool.
Year of the stock. Yep. During the band's second North American tour, Led Zeppelin, played the second of two nights at the Winterland Ballroom in San Francisco, California. It was during this show that A Whole Lot of Love was played live for the first time.
Really?
Yeah.
Got a whole lot of love. That kind of ties in with one of our stories today. But
Oh, good.
And Led Zeppelin seems
foresight.
to sneak.
Not foresight, foreshadowing? No. Insight. No, what's the word?
That's foresight. You were right.
Foresight.
John Forsythe.
John Forsythe. Johnny Appleseed.
You got it.
April 26, 1982. Out on a day's shopping, Rod Stewart was robbed by a gunman of his $50,000 Porsche on Hollywood Boulevard in Los Angeles, California.
Yikes.
You thought that was going to be a sweet story.
He was out shopping. Obviously, he wasn't in the car at the time.
He wasn't, but they robbed it, and its value was $50,000.
Back in 82.
Yeah, you can't get a new car for less than $50,000.
Oh, poor Rod.
Poor Rod. Just went out and bought a new one.
Did you know? Not that this has anything to do with what you just said, but you're used to that by now.
What was that?
I don't know why it made me think. I think because it was this day in music history, January 10th, 2025. No, I'm kidding. Whenever this broadcast. But you know when you did the story about Bob Dylan and his motorcycle accident, I forgot. And in my quest for knowledge about Woodstock, which I'm still currently enrolled in, he was living in Woodstock, New York at the time.
Rod Stewart was?
No.
Bob Dylan.
Okay. Bob Dylan.
I wasn't sure who
That's fair. You know, I didn't pay attention to you. You don't pay attention to me. That's grace of outside the mic. Love you. I love you, man. Go ahead.
Here we go. I'm going to skip through. We'll read this one. Maybe I shouldn't. Here we go.
I wonder if he ever got his Porsche back.
He probably just bought a new one. April 26th, 1995.
Got to get my Porsche back.
Courtney Love reportedly turned down an offer of $1 million from Playboy to pose nude for the magazine. What does that have to do with music? That's what I want to know.
Well,
Courtney Love.
Courtney was...
Way to hold true to your moral values.
Yeah, why am I forgetting his name all of a sudden? She was married to, from Nirvana, Kurt Cobain. Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, here, let's do a Nirvana. April 26, 1990, going back 5 years, Nirvana appeared at the Pyramid Club in New York City. The band's label Sub Pop filmed the show, and the performance of In Bloom was later used as a promo clip.
What was the name of the club? I'm sorry. I was trying to read it, and then my voice is over here. Pyramid Club.
The Pyramid Club in New York City.
Oh, what year did he
die?
End his life?
Oh, I don't know.
I don't remember either. We
was
just talked
later.
about it. I remember. But that's all right.
Yeah.
Go on.
All right, last one. Also not great, unfortunately. April 26, 2008, Amy Winehouse spent the night in custody after being arrested on suspicion of assault. Police said Winehouse had been in no fit state to be questioned when she arrived at the London station, and she was kept in the cell. The 24-year-old was to be questioned about an incident said to have occurred 3 days earlier after a 38-year-old man claimed he was assaulted by Amy Winehouse.
Oh my! I thought it would just have to do with
No.
drug use or indecent exposure or something crazy with her
sounds
life.
like
but
there was a little bit of that. Yeah.
Actually assaulted. Wow.
Yep.
That's kind of crazy. So I just quickly looked up, but now I can't find the story other than the fact. Here you go. It did say the time Rod Stewart's Porsche was stolen at gunpoint. So he was actually
in the car.
either entering, exiting the car, or in the car. And so somebody didn't just jump in the car and hotwire it when he was shopping.
Do your best Rod Stewart impersonation of how he might have handled that situation.
Jarrett, that's maybe too big. I can't even think of his voice.
He's got a raspy voice.
Yeah. Hey, Rod. Yeah, here's a case. Just don't have me. No, that was awful. I have to listen to somebody's voice before.
Good job. Well, let's wrap that up. That's on this day in music. We'll keep that short today.
Got something to say to you.
For those interested in checking out a specific day, you can check that out on thisdayinmusic.com. They've got a nice drop-down feature box. Type in your date, and you can see what happened on that day in music, as well as who was born on that day in music. That features also is on there. What?
I'm sorry. I had to read on a little bit, and I said, here's the keys.
Yeah.
That was it says, Stewart, accompanied by his 3-year-old daughter, Kimberly, and his secretary, Martha Bayer, surrendered the car keys in an attempt to keep everyone safe. See, I nailed him. I mean, I might not have had the voice, but I knew what Rod would have done.
You channeled your inner Rod. He would
did.
give up the car for his
He
family.
would. He's like, yeah, we're fine. Don't hurt us. All right. I've
got 3 more. Don't worry.
Yeah. Trying to think of one of his other songs, but I can't. All right. That was fun. Hey, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Mini
That was
episode
my
today.
part.
Again, no, I'm not trying to quit this episode. Actually, I'm just.
You can't quit it.
It's you can't quit me. I can't quit you, Jared.
I can't
That was
quit
bad. We don't want to do that reference on our show
Yeah.
today.
Yeah. So what are you thinking today, Marty? What are we going to talk about?
Well, Jarrett, it's nice that you pretend that you have no idea what we're
You're
going to
right.
talk
I
about.
know a little bit.
But I will, I don't know if we'll keep this in or not, because I'm just going to put a tiny teaser because you had mentioned more interviews. But I do want to at least touch upon the fact for all of you out there that are wondering where Woodstock Part 2 is. It is still coming. I did reference doing some more research. I finally, for the first time in my life, I started watching the director's cut, which is much longer than the original film.
Of the Woodstock documentary?
Of the Woodstock,
Okay.
the movie itself that was created from Woodstock, which is still the #1 documentary of all time.
And it was filmed in '69, just shortly after.
At the concert.
At the concert.
Yeah, it was all, I mean, and then edited, but it's all footage from the concert. But anyway, I saw the actual, I didn't finish watching the director's cut, so I have watched the actual movie, which I'm surprised I've never seen in my life
Yeah, me
to
neither.
this point, but I'm glad that I have now. I was truly moved by it. It was, again, just such an epic event.
Did you cry?
I'll tell you later.
Oh.
I cried, Jerry. I got a little emotional, got a little verklempt. in the end, for sure.
That means you had something in your throat.
I did. No, I'm going to admit it. I was moved, especially by Jimi Hendrix's performance. But there is, and I can throw a name out there, and we did talk about that. We are hoping that we might be able to get an interview from the associate producer. That's all I'm going to say.
Whoa.
And in doing a little more research this week, and then I suddenly realized as you texted me late last night that you weren't sleeping well, and I wasn't either.
We kind of had a, what do you call it when things align?
A shared experience?
No, there's a serendipitous.
Yeah, that's a little more cool word for it. Thanks,
Is that
Jarrett.
though? I don't know if that's the right word.
I think that's the right word, and I'm proud of you, Jarrett.
We're making it sound way more cooler than it was. I couldn't sleep, and I texted Marty at 4 a.m. Hey, cool if we meet at 8 tomorrow. Can't sleep.
Yeah, and I was up. I said, same boat. I'm up, and it made me realize that we didn't really have a lot of. We didn't have a lot to go into this show with yet. At this point, we hadn't talked all week. We both get our busy schedules. Yeah. So I started checking around.
Did a little digging. And one of the things that I saw, and then I mentioned this to you, and it turned out to be, as usually is the case, sometimes it ends up being even more interesting than we initially thought it might have been. Right. I found something that said country music gave birth to what we now know as distortion, the very sound that fills every headbanger's brain to this day. And it says that an engineer named Glenn Snoddy turned a blown transformer into distortion, and the original mistake can be found on country singer Marty Robbins' Don't Worry. That's the song, the name of the track. Wow. And he sold his new invention to Gibson Guitar in 1962, and the Maestro Fuzz Tone, the first ever guitar effects box, was born. Later, this same tone would be used on a song called Satisfaction. I can't get no. I was just going to say, I know that, gosh dang it, Keith Richards used that pedal early on in their career. That's what I know about that section that you shared. So cool. So yeah, Jarrett and I tried something a little bit different. So what we did is as we started spending a little bit of time trying to dive into this, we realized there's a lot of sort of debate and different theories about the origin and the history of distortion in music. Yeah. And so we're going to kind of bounce our research off each other and see if we can't align to have some serendipitously align. Yeah. There's another word, though. That's not it. But you're right. I like serendipitous. What's wrong with that? No, it's a word that you say a lot. I do. You've said it before, and I'll think of it later. It'll be too late. But yes, this is really cool. As a guitar player, this conversation is great because serendipitous. Hi, Google girl. She sounds so optimistic this morning. I kind of missed her. Yeah. Will you tell your buddy Google boy to cram it? Serendipitous. Okay, thank you. So could you ask her another question? Because I'm thinking she wasn't paying attention. Google girl, what's your favorite holiday? Serendipitous. Huh. Okay. Well. She's just not with it. She's stuck. I'm sorry. I just love hearing her voice. I'm like, I don't have time to look something else up. I kind of missed her. We're her biggest fan. Occurring are discovered by chance in a happy or beneficial way. Okay. There. Sure. You go. So distortion for me as a guitar player. Yeah, that's a good place to start. I think for any guitar player, when you think of effects or you think of modifying your tone, your natural guitar tone, that's kind of the first place people start playing with, I feel like. Especially in modern times, now that everything is pretty much accessible through digital stomp boxes or digital effects, I would say either distortion or reverb would be kind of the first place a young guitar player might explore with sound. Right, as he's trying to dial in his sound that he wants to have. Or try to mimic, somebody famous who has a classic sound. I know for me, my first experience with distortion, young growing up, I was really into Angus Young and getting his tone because I enjoyed he had a nice heavy, I don't want to say heavy metal, but like a heavy rock, big fat guitar sound, but yet very much blues influenced his playing and his style. And I really love that. I'm a big fan of blues, and I think that's why I resonated so much with Angus. But really, his distorted guitar was very much a clean, it wasn't a heavy saturated guitar. It was very clean, and I think I appreciated that. And that comes from his influences, like Chuck Berry and stuff like that, who really, and I'm going to touch a little bit on that in my little thing on this.
My little thing.
My little thing.
Yeah.
Where that, I feel like that was when it really took off. And I don't know what you experience or what you found out, but that's kind of where my head went right away when we started talking about this.
Well, and that makes sense. And I knew that was what was sort of, for me, interesting about doing this sort of dual research thing, because you're a guitar player.
Yeah.
I'm a piano player, so distortion isn't something that I've ever really messed a lot with. I think I did actually try a pedal once with a piano, and it was kind of fun. Try a phase pedal, a distortion pedal or something.
Well, like a Wurlitzer, oftentimes they will
put the electric
distortion
pianos.
in the, get a little bit of a gain situation. Which, maybe before we move on, let's talk about what distortion is.
Let's wait 1 second. Just let me wrap up what you're saying.
Go.
I think what you said totally correlates to what you see when you start researching the history too, because it all emerged from that desire for these guys, these guitar players, to come up with something
to alter their
different.
sound. Yeah,
to alter their sound. Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I pulled a little bit of I'll just read my definition, and then you can take back over. Let me just pull it up here.
Wait a sec. Okay. Yeah, you do that.
Okay.
Distortion.
Distortion. Hello.
Distortion. She's so friendly and kind of timid today.
Just copy and paste this whole definition and just stick it in there and see.
Yeah, I don't know.
See what she says.
We never figured out how to do that, actually. Well, we did on some other thing.
Some other device.
Ad, but we can get one word at a time out of this girl. That's why we miss Marilyn. I think it was Marilyn.
Marilyn.
I swear to God it was, Jared. I'm going to bet you $5.
Somebody let us know who it was. Okay, so distortion, or a better descriptive word, overdrive. That really describes how they initially would get the effect of having a distorted sound. The sound that many described as like fuzzy or gritty, and oftentimes today you'll hear about, how much dirt do you have on your guitar? So it's definitely grungy, it's edgy, it's that sound.
I say that, but then I always just want you to clean it off, because it
just clean the guitar. Because there's all the finger sweat on there.
Yeah, different kind of dirt. Okay.
So that sound has really impacted the world of music. Can be found in a lot of different genres, and it's been, like we talked about, used on many different instruments, like the guitar, the keyboard. It's been used on vocals. It's been used on a harmonica, brass instruments like a trumpet, the bass guitar for a cool synth effect. And then even a lot of percussive stuff, drum kits to kind of get an isolated, or what do you want to call it, edgy track for drums. It's used a lot of time in that. But kind of to achieve this, the very basic distorted sound, from my experience as a guitar player, it's utilizing a tube amp, and that was pretty much all they had back in the day when they kind of first produced this sound was tube amps.
Tube amps, yep.
And how you do it is you increase the gain on these amps. So you're driving the amplifier hard. You drive it until the sound being amplified pushes past the, the maximum level of that gain of the volume.
And it's the tube originally,
and it's
right?
the tube, yep.
Okay.
And so basically what happens is the signal, the audio signal waves, they begin to get cut off, or what we call clip. They start to clip, which basically just means they're kind of cutting off the top of the wave, the audio wave.
Yeah.
And this gives that really raspy, fat sound because it's essentially just roughing up that audio sound, that wave sound, and that comes out. And that's basically what we associate a lot of times with rock, metal, those kind of genres, is that distorted, grungy, edgy sound.
Right. So that's what came to be known as the definition. But originally, right, it was all, like they said, a lot of what I had discovered was accidental in the beginning.
In the article that I read, and I pretty much pulled a lot of my info from openculture.com, they started it off that way, and they didn't mention the happy accidents that happen. So go ahead, dude, because I don't have a lot of info on that.
Well, one of the first things that I discovered was, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, and I took a few notes and then tried to memorize some of this too, or tried to commit it to memory, but one of the first according to what I read, one of the first actual recordings was Junior. They pronounce it Bernard. I think it's Barnard.
Yeah.
He played guitar for Bob Wills and his Texas Playboys.
Right.
And the story I heard there was that he had a tube that busted or came loose or something like that. And so he had actually, I hope I have the right guy. I think I do, because there were several of these stories about sort of accidents happening.
Yeah.
And he stuffed a bunch of newspaper. I think it was a Fender amp.
Sure.
And
yeah.
Yeah, so he tried to get the tube to not fall out. So between the tube not functioning properly, perhaps, and then the newspaper, he came up with his sound, which I'm actually I think this is a clip of his sound. And it wasn't heavy distortion at first.
So just to, go ahead.
Yeah, let's see.
All you good friends stand by. Here's that fat boy rag.
So that's not a...
What
it's
was
not a
with
heavy
the-
distortion, but what?
What was with the announcer voice that was pretty popular back in the day? Because that almost reminded me a lot too of like Chuck Berry, and he was always like, "Well, let me tell you now," the kind of that announcer voice.
Well, I think
way
Bob-
off topic, but that's
No, I think it's cool you brought that up, because I remember hearing Bob Wills and his Texas Playboys mentioned in the whole documentary they did about country music on public television. Did you ever watch any of that?
No, I remember you talking about that though on a previous episode.
It's fascinating, and this is one of the first really kind of popular, sold a lot of records kind of a band.
Yeah.
And I think they started out as sort of a ballroom square dance kind of a band. So you had this really animated Bob Wills.
Kind of a big band.
Yeah, almost like
sound.
narrating. And yeah, and I've
Nice.
heard one of the things he would say to Junior, when Junior was going to take a lead, he's like, "Get it.
Get it, Junior.
Get it, Junior."
That's like Johnny Cash when he used to have his trio. He'd be like, what he would say something, Luther play the boogie or something, because his guitar player was Luther Perkins.
Luther, play that boogie.
That's awesome.
Oh, this is the same. See,
You
I
can hear
wouldn't
that
have
old
even
style distorted, the clipping sound.
That was called the well, there you go, Barnard Blues. I see now. If I had heard that without knowing about the discussion about distortion, I don't know if I would have considered that guitar to even have distortion. But once you're kind of listening for it, you do hear a little bit of distortion.
Yeah, I feel like during that era of music, it was used pretty. It was a light thing. It wasn't like what we think about like Metallica these days, or a lot of the heavy metal bands. That's just, like I said, saturated.
Yeah.
If anything, it was very used subtly, probably because that's the only way they could get it to come out of their amp, was just barely coloring the audio as it comes out.
Yeah, they hadn't pushed it.
No,
to that point
they
yet.
hadn't explored to where it was going to become. So
Briefly, before I
go
hand
ahead.
it off, we're going to pass this back and forth a little bit. After that, they give credit to several other artists who, and I think there may have been related stories about, and it may be at this point, at some point in time, and this is early enough as back in the 40s when this was happening, or early 50s, some of the artists started actually sabotaging their amps themselves.
yes,
And there's some stories about that, but I'm not sure how, but we'll just give you a little taste of this. Is Gory Carter.
nice.
And I think he was like an African-American blues guitarist, I think. And
We are, just to let you know, we're lining up
Okay.
essentially perfectly. So I think
Good.
You mentioned about Junior, and that was kind of my first. I predicted it was going to be an old blues player or something that had kind of that sound. So for it to be a country dude in the 40s, that's kind of cool. Or country early rock sound. So keep going though. Sorry.
Well, no, that's good. And what I'm fascinated by, and why this became more fascinated, was because even though the story that I initially saw kind of referred to and gave that guy credit for designing something, I didn't realize that it was happening so much earlier, that people were already having this experience with their guitar and their amp or whatever they were doing. So let's listen just a little bit of Gory here for a second, see if we can hear his. Now I'm just hearing a piano though, dang it. Let me get back here. They'll probably do a lead.
Yeah.
Let's take it. Get it, Gory.
Cool.
Right
Very
on.
cool.
Very cool. And I can hear it there. He's pushing it. That's 1949.
If I could go back to a time, that's where I would go to experience that music being played for the first time.
Well, and it makes you think, because part of what came into this was the whole advent of rock and roll. And I know so many people credit Elvis.
Sure.
Was Elvis around in the 40s?
Yeah, he was.
He was.
But
Okay.
young, just like the rest of them. I think pretty young.
Whoops, sorry. My bad.
I like it.
Yeah.
Keep it
I
playing.
mean, there's a lot of people who are doing that. Sounds to me like, blues, rock.
Yeah.
That was cutting a swath into the rock and roll world right away there, baby. That's an interesting way to put it. But go ahead.
I'm going to dive in, and I think there's going to be a theme here because I got pretty technical with some stuff, and I paid a lot of attention to the type of guitar and the amp that they were using.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that you assumed that it was a Fender amp that a lot of them were playing through. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to jump in there. So just the research that I found, it said that many of the players preferred an early amp to achieve the sound. It was an 18-watt Fender amp called the Super. It was introduced in 1947 utilizing the vacuum tubes like we talked about, and players would boost the gain until the tubes began to clip, creating that signal break. And then other players at the time that were exploring with the sound were also kind of jumping on and playing that amp. So guys like Chuck Berry, Ike Turner, you mentioned Gory Carter, and that song that you just played, Rock a While, some credit that to being the first rock song ever made.
I think I read that tune. What did you say the amp was? A Fender?
It's made in 1947. It's an 18-watt Fender Super.
It's called a Fender Super.
Yep.
Okay. I thought it for some reason because I saw Rocket 88. I wonder what he's referring to.
I've heard
with
Rocket 88, but that was a song, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was a song. Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
that's a lot of times they would refer to cars. So maybe there's well, it couldn't be a car. 88. It wasn't 88 yet. So I don't know what they would be rocking.
No, but model number 88. Who knows?
yeah.
We'll have to look that up, what that song meant too. But okay.
Absolutely.
And that's the one you said Rocket 88 was at some credit as the first rock and roll.
Rock a While was accredited as the first.
Oh, that's
that
it.
one that
Okay.
you just played. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, this is cool how it's lining up actually too. And it's interesting to see as you listen to these clips from these songs how it's evolving already and it's getting a little edgier too. So I did give a quick listen to one of these. It's called Rocket 88, the one I just mentioned. Whoops, here we go.
Oh, heavy distortion there.
Yeah, so that's Jackie Brenston, and that was released in, I believe it said 1951. That was released in 1951.
Cool.
And now that's the first time where, for me, being a keyboard player as well, I would listen to that and go, yeah, that guitar has distortion on it.
Absolutely.
For sure.
I would say for my taste in that song, almost too much distortion.
It's pushing it.
But it's cool, and they would often describe the distorted sound as like a fat kind of sound, and that kind of serves right there. That guitar really filled up the mix. Doom do 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 do. I mean, it just was cool. Another way that they were able to get that sound is they invented what's called the humbucking pickup at that time.
Oh, okay.
And if I remember right,
familiar with that.
openculture.com, they talked about that a little bit. Mm-hmm. The guy that kind of first invented his humbucking pickup. I don't remember what his name was, but around that same time. And that's kind of where Les Paul, I think, too, took off from there, because the Les Paul has humbucker pickups in it as well. But that was just to get, I think everybody was trying to get a fatter sound at that time.
Yeah, well, obviously, between the accidents, the actual sabotage, I know it said later here, somebody actually, I think I made a note about that, took a pencil and poked a hole in their speaker as well.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find it if you've got something, because there was one of these and it sounded so futuristic in the sense of the way this guitar was produced. And I think it might have been the one, did you read anything about somebody named Willie Kazard?
Nope.
No.
No,
Okay.
I didn't get that one.
Well, if you have got something else, I'm going to see if I can't find him and see if I can find that recording, because I think that was the one that really grabbed my ear. Like, I could not believe that it was that old of a song, the way the treatment of the guitar was produced. So,
well, I'm going to move forward a little bit, at least as far as timeline goes, and we're going to look at the 60s, because that's really, I feel like, when exploration of sound and everything started to happen, and some really iconic musicians really found their tone that I think they're most noted for. So by the 1960s, bands like the Stones, the Kinks, Jimi Hendrix, Marty Robbins in 1961, they kind of made that distorted sound pretty popular.
right.
So around this time introduces an iconic amplifier that is a credit for a lot of what we hear today in the more heavy rock or metal scene that use a lot of distortion. And so around this time, the 1960s, Marshall amplification, you've heard of that, the Marshall amp.
Oh, yeah.
Started to become a kind of a household name for a lot of the guitarists that were playing music at that time. Mm-hmm. And the term crank it to 11 or turn it up to 11, you've heard that before?
Yes.
That comes from really these Marshall amps. So most amps at the time...
You know the movie that came from, right?
What, Spinal Tap was
yes,
it?
Yes. Yeah. This one goes to 11.
This one goes to 11. It was the Marshall amp that really got a credit for it. Most of the amps would just go 0 to 10 if you were going to crank it. Well, Marshall thought it would be a cool thing if they... Not that it made a huge difference, you really can't tell at that point, but they went ahead and their amps went to 11. And when you push that gain all the way to 11, man, you were getting just screaming distorted. Because distortion also, a lot of what you hear is like the harmonic tones that come out of it as well, because of the heavy signal push that you're essentially amplifying through that and getting those tones. That's why like Eddie Van Halen, a lot of those like harmonic sounds that he was able to get, he really was able to get those because of the manipulation through distortion. We have to go back and visit. Have you seen Spinal Tap? Yeah, I've seen Spinal Tap.
When's the last time you've seen Spinal Tap?
It's been a while. Definitely when I was really into heavy rock and stuff, that's when I watched.
Okay, we have to do a movie night. And this is interesting because, to be honest, I didn't realize that Marshall actually had a knob.
Yeah.
I thought that was just...
Crank it to 11.
Okay. Yeah. I thought this was just a reference and that there was something from my memory of the film, something about like a modification maybe that he did. Yeah, but it's an actual knob
most
that
amps,
went to 11.
And I'll look into it and make sure that I've got my details correct. I've got the facts right because this is cool. But I do remember hearing that, most of your Fender amps that were pretty popular at that time, a lot of the tube amps, would have 0 to 10 on their volume and gain knobs.
Okay.
Marshall thought it would be cool. They were going to, because distortion is all about pushing it to the extreme, pushing that signal to the maximum point where it starts to get that rough, gritty sound. Marshall came up with giving it to 11. So it's like, it kind of created the false sense that as a guitar player, you were able to go further with the Marshall amp than others.
This is so cool to hear that. And did they still go to 11?
Yeah, I think they still, if you get like the nice stacks or the combo amps like that, they will have on the head unit, they'll have the gain to 11. You're Googling now. What are you finding? What are you seeing on that?
I'm seeing that it actually, shows it going to 11.
Yep.
And then there was a reference. Oh, darn it. It just disappeared. I'm gonna do this again really quick because there was a reference to Spinal Tap.
Nice.
Let's see if it pops up again here, and if not, then just go ahead and move on. But no, I think it's obviously that is an actual thing, and that's amazing to me because I always assumed that was just for
the movie,
for comedy. And they do show a picture of him talking in the movie, and I forgot. Tap. Yeah, Spinal Tap turns 35. Wow, that was back in 2019 or something like that. So
that's awesome.
I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah. So speaking of, trying to push it that way, I wasn't able to find anything in the song that I did find, I guess. I want to look. This makes me want to just jump in and find out more about these guys. Willie Kazart was his name. And they mentioned that as well. It was Jackie Brenston and his Delta Cats. We were at Rocket 88, Rock a While. And now we get to a guy where I did find, and I think this is the one where this was maybe one of the first times where they actually had this reaction to music where people thought it was bad and that was going to disturb children and make them bad people.
Right.
Something like that. So this was, have you ever heard of Link Ray?
Link Ray. No, I don't believe. He was didn't he have something to do with kind of the start of this? Go ahead, because I maybe have heard this.
No, I've never heard of him, and they say he's the one that used a pencil and stabbed his speaker. So that may have been one of the first famous stories about actual intentional sabotage to your equipment.
Yeah,
I'd never heard of him before, and when I listened to the song, it kind of blew my mind. It was called Rumble. So let's take a listen to a little bit of Rumble, and hopefully it comes in a good spot here.
Oh yeah, there's distortion on that.
Yeah, and that's not even as heavy as the first. Okay, it's pretty heavy, but that might not even be the one that I heard in this little video that I watched, because there was something else, and that might be the Willie Kazart song, and I'll have to,
Okay.
if I don't find it on this episode, we'll explore it later
See, that
on.
song, he really had more of a shimmering sound with the distortion. It kind of gave the harmonic shimmering. You
Yeah.
can hear all the different little harmonic tones that are coming out of that distorted sound, and he got that by poking the speaker with a pencil.
That's what it says, yeah.
Oh, very
Yeah,
cool.
He did that.
You know, Jimi Hendrix was accredited for a lot of he got a lot of the sounds out of his guitar before they were invented, just by experimenting with taking stuff apart or messing with it or whatever. Even the sound of his guitar when he lights it on fire on that famous video, when he kind of kneels and he throws the gas on it. I mean, you can hear kind of the crackling and what it does to the pickups. Like, that was just a time of exploring sound and pushing the limit. And that's really, I feel like, the birth of Distortion was just, we push something to its end, and you know, you got this crazy tone. That's awesome.
And then does yours continue on? Because you mentioned Jimmy.
Not focused. Really, that's what I've got. Is it would continue on, and then basically just all the other bands that would play Marshall amps and stuff. So I pretty much gave you the farm here at this point.
That's good though. This is good because we had a few things that were not sort of opposed. I was almost thinking that the way it looked originally, other than speculation about when somebody first did it or what was the first song,
Yeah.
it does kind of follow a historical timeline.
Right.
That stays fairly accurate. Excuse me,
While you're eating a freaking banana.
Jarrett had some coffee. Gotta have something to eat.
Oh, God.
I'm gonna have to do that. Well, mine, after Willie Kazart and Ray Link, they were still talking about people. You remember the song "You Really Got Me Going"? Girl, you really got me now.
But that's not the Van Halen version. The
No.
one who originally wrote it?
Dave Davies, and I think it was the Kinks.
The Kinks, yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I had no idea that song was as old as it is. It's almost as old as me. It was 1964.
Oh, wow. And you were 66? 65.
You bet I was 66 back then. Yeah, I'm now 120 something. No, we won't go there, but it's about as close. It's about as old as me. Anyway, he took a razor blade and sliced his speaker in like 2 places.
Oh, geez.
So
That's got to do more than, you're not really pushing the signal. If anything, that's just you're getting probably the clipping sound from the physical damaged, and as the speaker is vibrating, it's probably making that crackle sound.
well, you would think, but I mean, we're still in the early 60s in the era of distortion where they're having to create it by sabotaging.
I was going to say, but
their instruments.
At least when you're pushing the gain, you can always go back to your clean channel. Once you ruin that speaker, your only choice is a distorted guitar, like a distorted sound after that. So they're going pretty. I mean, they're going to an extreme to get this sound.
They are, and I think that's to me that's what's most fascinating almost about this is just the fact that they made such an effort to try these different things. So I've got one more, and then you get to where what I did discover comes back to the story that I read, is that Glenn Snoddy, what happened is actually Marty Robbins in 1961, his bassist had a sound of distortion that was due to a faulty connection or circuit in the mixing board.
Oh, wow.
So we'll hear a little bit about that one. So there's a lot that happened before that. So I can't, I don't think you can give credit to that being the first application of distortion. But what happened after that is the studio engineer, who was named Glenn Snoddy, he reverse engineered what was going on in the circuitry, and he actually developed the first pedal, the first fuzz pedal.
Oh, yes.
So it was called the Maestro Fuzz Tone. And so now you actually had the option, and guitar players could turn it on or off if they wanted to, and they didn't have to destroy their equipment.
Okay, I think
to do
that's
it.
the pedal that Keith Richards, the Rolling Stones use. I think that's the one.
I think it may have been. Yes, it says that it was utilized first on Satisfaction.
There you go.
With Keith
That's
Richards.
the pedal. Yeah, he made that pretty popular with that stuff.
He did, and what they said is originally that the sales were kind of lukewarm, and you could imagine that. Not everybody's going to jump on this.
It's kind of at that
fuzz
time
pedal.
it was like the devil tone, right? It was like the devil sound. It
Oh,
sounded
yeah.
evil and crackly and not
Yeah.
pretty.
Yeah,
And cute.
some people probably liked it, some people didn't.
Yeah.
But we're getting to that point where we're almost to where rock and roll is really starting to emerge. There was another gentleman named Ivor Arbiter. Ivor Arbiter. He did a similar product, which was called Fuzz Face. Have you ever heard of a Fuzz Face?
Nope.
You should get a Fuzz Face,
I've
Jarrett.
got a little bit of a fuzzy face.
Yeah, other than your shadow there. That's a little more than a 5 o'clock shadow. But that's when it really started to take off because Jimi Hendrix
Yep.
had a fuzz face and he used it on Are You Experienced?
Okay.
And Purple
Yeah.
Haze. And then
Purple
you
Haze.
had mentioned Jimmy messing with his sound and
Yeah.
pushing things.
Yep.
So I think that's when now we're getting to the point where this is becoming
This is a thing.
what turned into the whole desire of, essential hard rock in the 70s and the 80s was, Distortion was essential to that.
And that was kind of the start of it becoming a digital sound as well. You could digitally replicate a lot of these sounds that these guys were getting by damaging their amps or pushing the tubes too hard or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, nowadays it's so easy to get that heavily saturated, distorted sound just by $100 guitar pedal.
Isn't that cool? That
It's
now
so
you don't have to. If you want, you can still go and muck up your amp, Jarrett. I think you should do that.
Yeah,
today.
you can, yeah. But that's just technology in its greatest form. It's just making the process easier, and allowing for the creative mind to carry on even further. When it's easier to get these tones, then you push that even farther, and you push that even farther. We're seeing that with music today with a lot of the electronic sounds. Mm-hmm. They're able to push frequencies to a point where we've not heard that before.
Well, and how entertaining. Funny that as much as we've talked about music and I've discussed music in my life and been a musician, that this is one of those things where I'm just excited to find something like this out that I didn't know before. I've probably heard bits or pieces of it,
Right.
but had not realized how something that became, like they said, it's the lifeblood of rock and roll, metal, punk.
Right.
And without Distortion, that really wouldn't have emerged the way it did, and it started as just an accident.
And would the rebellious anarchist sounds and political movement through music be as effective if they didn't have the harsh sounds that this distortion sound brought?
One wonders.
This is the benefit for us as the hosts of this podcast is we know bits and pieces through our life of certain historical events.
Teeny tiny little bits.
Teeny tiny little bits, exactly. But after doing the research, this is cool. I appreciate this so much more and the history of it. Mm-hmm. I'm envious because we don't live in an era now where we're able to pioneer a lot of sounds. A lot of what you hear has been done before.
Yeah.
And a lot of the music and combination of chords and how the composition might come out we are running out of room in a sense. And I could just be jaded in that sense, but some younger producer might argue with me that no, there's still plenty of exploring, and there totally is. Music is creative, and it's all in how you interpret it.
It's your millennial angst.
It's my millennial angst.
We come
coming
back
out
full
right
circle. Well, I think you make a good point, but I also think that in some ways it's when you get to that point where it seems like everything has been figured out and technology has done this, you do start to hear little stories, and that could be perhaps an idea for a segment down the road is what are people doing? And I know you do hear stories now and then. I forget it's not Victor Wooten, but I believe his brother who plays with Bela Fleck. And after I saw him at a concert and then a seminar in Rapid, he was showing how he was making his own instruments. He had something that he had created that he played. So there are still people that are trying to push that envelope, and I'm sure there are still accidents that happen now and then.
Oh, yeah.
That end up getting utilized. But it does, it's gotten so full of so many devices and so much technology that you almost yearn for something like that.
Well, and it encourages the new era of musicians to go back to some of those original sounds.
Yeah.
What's really popular with a lot of rootsy stuff or Americana stuff is to go back and record on 2-inch tape, or to get that 2-inch tape retro sound, the small little hum or hiss that you might hear. Yeah. That's cool. That's coming back, and if we go back to it, we may be able to discover more.
I think so, and it makes me want to explore. It's blowing my mind. And of course, they're not the only ones, but several of the names mentioned in this are people that I've never listened to before. And I can't wait to sit down, listen a little more to Junior, listen to Gory, listen to Howlin' Wolf. That's one I didn't mention.
Howlin' Wolf.
How many more
Smokestack
years?
Lightning.
Oh, you know Howlin' Wolf.
Oh, I love that music, yes.
Good. Willie Kazart, Link Ray, all of these people who were on the cutting edge and cutting their speakers.
Literally cutting their speakers.
Cutting their speakers. I do believe that maybe, because it was Link Ray, okay, on a track called Rumble, and that's the one that led me to think that this was sounding like something you would hear later, not back in the 40s or 50s. But I'm starting to wonder, because the track I found, the original track, when I was reviewing it, didn't sound quite as intense. So I'm thinking maybe this got a little remastered.
Oh, okay.
As well.
Sure.
But check this out as far as something.
This is in the 40s or 50s, that kind of time?
I believe, actually, that it was back around it says the 50s. Okay. It was like the early 50s. So,
okay, I'm ready.
Listen to this. That's some heavy distortion, baby.
Yeah. That's like 70s rock, man.
Yeah, maybe not today, but later, or even grunge, or something along those lines.
Jeez, that's cool.
And I'd said that was the one.
I bet people. Yeah, go ahead. I bet we're going the same place.
Go ahead.
I bet that was not received. Either people thought it was super cool, or they were like, "What's this devil music you playing, son?"
I think, you're exact. That's probably why we never heard of Link Ray. He got chased out of town. It was said that they were worried it was going to cause gang fights. I think.
Of course,
is the quote that I read from that. Some of these people were ahead of their times.
Ahead of their time.
Way ahead of their time. So, and now we
Dang, man, what a good episode. That's a cool topic. I'm stoked.
Yeah, I'm glad we stumbled upon it. It's something, for me, I'm learning a lot.
And folks, we do talk about, not every episode beforehand, but this one we did talk about a little bit. But as far as the content and the details into what we've researched, we don't share that. So it's cool. It lined up. And how cool that how this all came about. This is what's cool about history. This is what science is made about.
Maybe that's the term that I use once in a while when you're referring to that, like in concert with one another. Well, it's interesting because the last episode we did secondhand songs.
Yeah.
And we were sort of in concert with one another,
right.
Sharing that information. And this one worked that way too. And I had a lot of fun.
Synchronicity. That's what I'm talking about. That's your word. You use synchronicity. Thank you for saying that. I can sleep
Not
tonight.
Serendipitous.
Finally.
Synchronicity. That was the Police song, of course.
That was the Police song.
A connecting principle. Carl Jung. There you go. And now we're going to listen to Marty Robbins.
Take us out.
That distorted bass that led to the advent of the fuzz pedal.
Thank you guys for listening.
Thank you.
Outside the mic.
Is that a little too loud? Thanks for joining us. Check us out, www.outsidethemic.com, and all podcast streaming platforms. Thanks, Outsiders.